Annabelle is a typical teenager, and these days that often means living with anxiety. Like people across the country and the world, Annabelle has ongoing feelings that can stop her from doing everyday things.
Your heart's going a million miles an hour and your mind's racing and you're just like, oh my gosh, how am I ever, it's never going to end.
Her mother Loretta knows what Annabelle has been going through is all too common.
I kind of have to mould my life to living with anxiety. I don't really go out, I don't like crowds of people.
Annabelle first started experiencing severe anxiety in primary school, and her family struggled to get support.
You met when you were 6 months old. We were just seeking help for this really sad, troubled little girl, and it was not really very clear what they could do to help us.
Eventually, Annabelle saw a psychiatrist, and over time she's developed her own coping strategies.
Things that have really helped me are pottery and clay. I love hanging out with my dogs, Sammy and Luna, and I think the main thing has been getting really good sleep and eating well.
Annabelle's learnt to adapt during a difficult time. Like hundreds of thousands of young people, she's entered adulthood during the pandemic.
The end of Year 12, when we were going back to school, was really hard and the most stressful of the whole of those 2 years.
With so much uncertainty in our lives, it's no surprise anxiety is growing. Throughout the pandemic, mental health crisis lines have received record numbers of calls from people in distress. One anxiety-specific helpline saw an increase of more than 200%. And it's being felt across the world. An international study led by researchers from the University of Queensland estimated anxiety disorders grew by more than 25% in 2020. But even before COVID-19, anxiety was the most common mental health condition in Australia, with 1 in 4 people experiencing it at some point in their lives. And it's been getting worse over the past decade.
We have seen quite a substantial rise in both psychological distress and other measures of poor mental health.
Roger Wilkins is the lead author of the annual Hilda survey, which has followed the lives of 17,000 Australians over 20 years. In its first decade, mental health was relatively steady, but since 2011, that's changed.
Things like a rise in financial stress that's connected to poor mental health, decrease in social connectedness.
The jump in anxiety has been most remarkable among young people. So with mental health awareness rising and young people often being more willing to talk about it, is it just a matter of more people seeking treatment and being diagnosed more often? Well, that's likely a factor, but researchers say social and economic problems are playing a bigger role.
It's getting harder for young people to establish themselves economically, to get financial independence, to get into home ownership, to get secure full-time employment. It's taking them longer to do that.
And young women are twice as likely as men to suffer from anxiety. That gap continues throughout life. So, once again, experts say it's not just that women are more likely to seek help. We are more vulnerable to anxiety with different brain chemistry and biology. We face more financial hardship, violence and trauma. We learn to behave differently too.
There are differences in the way women and men are taught to react to stress and acceptable behaviours, and that also can play into a more internalising or inward-looking sort of mode of operating for women, which then might predispose to more anxious behaviours.
While women are more likely to have anxiety, young men are also reporting it in rising numbers. Emmanuel Asante is one of them. The 26-year-old was diagnosed with anxiety after getting chest pains at school. He says boys and men need to be taught to speak up about their mental health.
It's okay to ask for help. You asking for help doesn't mean you are weak. It means we want to remain strong.
Emmanuel learned to cope with help from a counsellor and found solace in art. Now painting is his career.
We are like emotional beings, so if we are going through things that we need to talk to someone, we should be bold enough to let people know this is how we are feeling.
Not everyone will need professional help like a manual, but the good news is that if you get the right support, anxiety can be treated.
The brain is quite malleable as well, and so all of the different positive connections can really end up making a major, major difference and improve mental health.
For most of us, making sure we have strong social connections and can ask friends and family for support will be enough.
We should actually talk to someone. It could be your parents, it could be your friend. Just a little conversation a day can actually save a life.